implementation of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and to participate in this ceremony, marking my appointment as co-chair of the Advocacy Group of Eminent Persons for SDGs. On 11th April 2017, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, announced my appointment, together with my co-chair, the Norwegian Prime Minister, Her Excellency Mrs. Erna Solberg, until the end of 2018. I am aware that this appointment is not about me. It is about Ghana as a mark of trust in her leaders. My predecessor, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, held this position until the end of 2016. It is one which honors the Ghanaian people and honors the achievements we chalked in the implementation of the Millennium Development Goals. Furthermore, it is positive acknowledgement of our welcome adherence to the rule of law and the principles of democratic accountability in the governance of our nation. Naturally, it also signals the high expectations the international community would have of us in the implementation of the SDGs. Ghana has a reputation for leading the way when it matters the most. From the struggle for independence to becoming a beacon of stability and democracy on the continent, these have all brought meaning to the stirring concept of the Black Star of Africa. As co-chair, I am to work closely with fellow advocates to promote the 17 SDGs, which represent an ambitious and transformative agenda of global development. The SDG advocates are to promote the universal character of the SDGs, including the commitment to leaving no one behind, promote the engagement of new stakeholders in the implementation and financing of the SDGs, encourage partnerships with government, civil society, and the private sector to share knowledge and resources, and raise awareness for the integrated nature of the SDGs. This cannot be a light responsibility, for it calls on my part for an enhanced personal contribution to the transformation of our world. More significantly, it calls into play the development of Ghana and her people. And that is why I attach such great importance to this occasion, and how reassured I am by the declaration of support by the minority leader in Parliament. For that declaration guarantees national support for the work I'm about to undertake. Mr. Minority Leader, I'm grateful for your words. And the advice of President Mahama you conveyed today. Ladies and gentlemen, Agenda 2030, the target date for the completion of the SDGs, presents our generation with a great opportunity to fight inequality on all fronts, wipe out extreme poverty, tackle the issues of climate change, and reverse the degradation and unsustainable use of our environmental resources. This agenda is an investment in our future, the future of our youth and that of our children. We are obliged to leave them with an enduring legacy of a richer, more stable, more secure, and more peaceful world. I'm pleased to state that Ghana has taken up the challenge of the SDGs. We've captured them in our coordinated program for economic and social development policies which in accordance with the dictates of Article 36, Clause 5 of the Constitution of the Republic, I shall be presenting to Parliament in its next session, starting in October. Our strategic approach to implementing the SDGs involves all stakeholders. Government is committed to strengthening its partnership with Friends of Ghana, multilateral and bilateral, the private sector and civil society, as we endeavor to achieve and implement the SDGs. We are committed to leaving no one behind. The programs and policies that have been outlined in our coordinated program are all hinged towards the realization of the SDGs, both at the national and local levels. Our flagship programs and policies on how to ensure the realization of the SDGs will only be as good as how well they are financed and how robustly results are tracked and measured. Achieving the SDGs will require all the resources we can muster. We must therefore be efficient and effective, not only in mobilizing resources, but also in eliminating pervasive revenue leakages and addressing misallocation and misuse of public funds. Crucially, if we are to succeed in increasing domestic financing of the SDGs, we must address the unacceptable leakage of resources in the form of wanton corruption. Achieving the SDGs cannot be as business as usual. We need to be creative. We need to be innovative and find smart approaches to accelerate implementation in the context of our domestic agenda. And above all, we need to look beyond the benevolence and generosity of others to finance the implementation of the SDGs agenda. Ghana, and indeed Africa, has the means to finance the implementation of the SDGs. We cannot achieve the SDGs with an aid-dependent mentality. This is the inspiration and the passion behind my vision of a Ghana beyond aid. Ladies and gentlemen, the SDGs are intended to be the boldest and loudest articulation of a collective ambition for development the world has ever seen. They have helped focus the world's attention on a common agenda of development. We have a unique opportunity to transform our world, to protect this planet, and bring prosperity to all by diligently implementing the SDGs. In this regard, and like anyone who's passionate about any goal, I'm unhappy listening to important personalities who regard the SDGs as somewhat remote in scope. They are not, and they cannot be. Implementation and success of the SDGs must be everyone's business. It is the business of government and the public sector. It is the business of the security services. It is the business of religious organizations. It is the business of the private sector. It is the business of labor organizations. It is the business of professional associations. It is the business of special interest groups. It is the business of civil society. It is the business of individual communities. And it is the business of every citizen. The SDGs are about the future that we all want, and indeed the future that we should have. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has assembled a varied and diverse array of persons to constitute the group of advocates. Apart from political leaders like my co-chair and myself, the 15 other eminent persons include European royalty, global business leaders, civil society leaders, renowned gender activists, distinguished academics, leaders from the world of the arts, and a global sporting icon. They have been deliberately drawn from different backgrounds and possess the requisite capacity to help mobilize global support for the implementation of the SDGs. As co-chair of this eminent group of advocates, my particular role is to help garner the support of Africa's political leaders, especially her presidents and heads of states, to rally the masses of the African peoples behind the implementation of the SDGs. I'm aware that all of the SDGs are of equal importance and significance. But I hope you will forgive me if as AU Gender Champion, I single out for special mention SDG 5, which defines the goal of gender equality and full female empowerment. It is at the heart of the structure of the SDGs. Nonetheless, I can assure that I will endeavor to help mobilize strong political will and support for all the SDGs in order that Africa's leaders take action to rid the continent of poverty and gender biases, to build strong representative institutions, to stimulate inclusive economic growth, and to combat the effects of climate change. As part of Ghana's institutional arrangement for the implementation of the SDGs, I've constituted an interministerial committee of 15 ministers, chaired by the Minister for Planning, to oversee such implementation. It will report directly to the President. The members of the committee are Minister for Planning, Chairperson, the Minister for Trade and Industry, the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, the Minister for Finance, the Minister for Food and Agriculture, the Attorney General, Minister for Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, the Minister for Monitoring and Evaluation, the Minister for Education, the Minister for Health, the Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources, the Minister for Local Government and Rural Development, Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection, the Minister for Employment and Labor Relations, and the Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture. The Secretary to the committee will be the President's Special Advisor on the SDGs. And Mr. Osebimpe, I will respond to your request shortly. I need not stress that the committee must discharge its duties efficiently and ensure that Ghana becomes a shining example for the implementation of the SDGs. I now have the pleasure to inaugurate formally Ghana's Interministerial Committee for the implementation of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you, and may God bless us all in our homeland Ghana and make our great and strong.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Republic